Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm always excited for these deep dives, and this one is no exception. Seems like you're interested in living longer, but like really living, not just adding years.
Exactly. Health span over lifespan, as they say.
Yeah, love that. So we're diving into Young Forever by Dr. Mark Hyman.
Great book.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig into it. We've got a fantastic summary from Ben Munoz. You might know him from Ben's Friends and Nadine
Oh,
West.
yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so we're going to be using his insights to guide our conversation today. So, really, the mission here is to figure out how to avoid those, those less than stellar years that a lot of people end up facing as they age.
Absolutely. I mean, the stats are pretty grim. Something like 20% of the average person's life is spent in poor health.
Ugh, that's a scary thought. I don't know about you, but I want to spend as much time as possible feeling vibrant and healthy.
Me too. And that's what's so refreshing about Dr. Hyman's approach. He's not just talking about adding years to our lives. He's talking about adding life to our years.
I love that. And right from the start, he makes a pretty bold statement. He calls aging a treatable disease.
Right. It's a real paradigm shift.
It is. I mean, we tend to think of aging as this inevitable process that we just have to accept. But Dr. Hyman is saying, hold on a second. What if we could actually treat it?
Exactly. And that's where functional medicine comes in. It's all about getting to the root cause of health issues rather than just treating the symptoms.
Okay, so explain that a little more. What's the difference between functional medicine and, say, conventional medicine?
Well, think of it like this. Imagine you have a leaky faucet. Conventional medicine might just give you a mop to clean up the water on the floor. But functional medicine would be about figuring out why the faucet is leaking in the first place and fixing the pipe.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of just managing the symptoms of aging, functional medicine tries to address the underlying causes.
Exactly. And Dr. Hyman believes that many of the chronic diseases we associate with aging are actually a result of imbalances in these 7 key physiological systems.
Oh, yeah, he talks about those 7 systems a lot. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. So he talks about the hormonal system, the immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, repair, and then the structural system.
Wow, that's a lot. But basically, if those systems are out of whack, that's when we start to see those age-related issues.
Precisely. But the good news is that we can influence those systems and bring them back into balance.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me, because I always thought, well, genes play a big role in how we age. Like, aren't we kind of stuck with what we're given?
Well, genes definitely play a role, but Dr. Hyman stresses that they're not the whole story. He uses a great analogy. He says, our genes load the gun, but our lifestyle pulls the trigger.
I love that. So it's not just about our genetic predisposition, it's about the choices we make every day.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is something Dr. Hyman calls the abundance paradox.
The abundance paradox. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, for most of human history, we lived in a state of scarcity. Food was hard to come by, and our bodies evolved to thrive in those conditions. But now, we're surrounded by an abundance of food, especially processed food and sugar.
Right, we've got 24/7 access to pretty much anything we want to eat.
Exactly. And our bodies just aren't equipped to handle that kind of constant influx of calories, especially empty calories.
So this abundance, which seems like a good thing, is actually harming us.
In a way, yes. It's throwing off our natural balance and contributing to a lot of the health issues we face today.
Okay, so that sets the stage pretty well. We've got these 7 systems that need to be in balance, but our modern lifestyle is kind of working against us.
Right. And that's where Dr. Hyman's Young Forever program comes in. It's all about making lifestyle changes that align with how our bodies are designed to function.
Awesome. So let's dive into those recommendations. I'm ready to hear how we can start living younger.
Well, unsurprisingly, diet is a big part of it. He's a huge advocate for eliminating sugar and refined starches.
Okay, cutting back on sugar. That's one I've heard before. Anything else when it comes to diet?
He has a whole other book called The Pegan Diet, where he really dives deep into this way of eating.
Pegan diet? What is that? A combo of paleo and vegan?
You got it.
Yeah.
It's basically about focusing on whole, unprocessed foods with a heavy emphasis on vegetables and cutting back on grains and sugars.
Okay, interesting. So lots of veggies, less sugar. Got it. What else is part of this Young Forever plan?
He also talks about protecting your DNA. Avoiding processed foods is part of that. But he also recommends minimizing exposure to things like toxins and radiation.
Makes sense. We're bombarded with so many chemicals and pollutants these days. It's hard to avoid them completely, But I guess it's about being mindful and reducing exposure where we
Oh, exactly. And this is where he's really fascinating. He talks about these things called telomeres.
telomeres. That rings a bell. Didn't we learn about those in high school biology? They're like the little caps on our chromosomes, right?
You got it. Think of them like the plastic tips on your shoelaces.
Okay, I can picture that.
Every time a cell divides, those telomeres get a little bit shorter. And shorter telomeres are basically a sign of older cells.
Ah, so that's why they're connected to aging.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is that Dr. Hyman believes we can actually lengthen those telomeres through lifestyle changes.
Wait, hold on. We can actually make our telomeres longer. That's incredible. I'm definitely going to need to hear more about that.
Oh, there's a lot more to unpack there. But first, we have to talk about another fascinating process, autophagy.
Autophagy. Okay, that one's new to me.
It's basically your body's way of cleaning up damaged cells and proteins.
So it's like our cells have their own little garbage disposal system.
Pretty much. And it's essential for keeping our bodies functioning properly. But as we age, that autophagy process can slow down.
Ah, I see where this is going. So part of the Young Forever plan is figuring out how to boost autophagy.
Exactly. And one of the most surprising ways to do that is through fasting.
Fasting. So like skipping meals. I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
We don't have to jump into the deep end just yet, but it's definitely something to consider.
Okay, I'm putting fasting on my list of things to research. This is all so fascinating, but my brain is starting to feel a little full. Maybe we should pause here for a moment and let all this sink in.
Sounds like a good plan. So we were talking about autophagy, right? Like the cleanup crew for our cells.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Still wrapping my head around the idea that fasting could actually trigger that cleanup process, though.
I know, it seems kind of counterintuitive at first. But when you think about it, it makes sense. Like, if our digestive system is constantly busy processing food, it doesn't have as much time or energy to focus on those cellular repairs.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like giving our bodies a break so they can focus on the internal housekeeping.
Exactly. And there's growing evidence that it really works. Studies have shown that even short periods of fasting can have a significant impact on autophagy.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, I'm definitely adding fasting to my list of things to research. But before we get too sidetracked, I want to hear more about those other Young Forever recommendations.
Right. Well, next up we have something called senescent cells, or as some people call them, zombie cells.
Zombie cells. That sounds kind of creepy.
It's a pretty accurate description, actually. These are basically cells that should have died off, but haven't. They just sort of linger around, creating inflammation and basically messing things up.
So they're like the house guests who overstay their welcome and start causing trouble.
Exactly. And the problem is, as we get older, we accumulate more and more of these zombie cells.
Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. Is there anything we can do about it?
Thankfully, yes. There are compounds called senolytics that can help clear them out.
Senolytics, huh? Where do we find these magical zombie cell fighters?
Well, you probably won't be surprised to hear that they're found in plants.
Of course, those phytochemicals we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Those are really the unsung heroes when it comes to longevity.
Okay, I'm starting to see a theme here. Plants good, processed food bad.
Pretty much. But of course, we can't live on kale alone. We need energy, too.
Right. And that brings us to those little powerhouses in our cells. What were they called again?
Mitochondria.
Yes, mitochondria. Remember learning about them in biology class? They're like the tiny energy factories in our cells.
Exactly. They take the food we eat and convert it into usable energy.
Hmm.
But as we age, they don't function as efficiently.
Ah, so that's why we start to feel more tired and sluggish as we get older.
Partly, yes. But the good news is that we can give those little energy factories a boost.
Okay, now I'm really interested. How do we do that?
Well, that's where Dr. Hyman's Young Forever plan comes in. He outlines a number of strategies for optimizing mitochondrial function.
So it's not just about eating our veggies, it's about making sure those veggies are actually being converted into energy efficiently.
Precisely. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. We also have to talk about the importance of exercise.
Oh, yeah, exercise. Can't forget about that. But honestly, sometimes it feels like I barely have enough time to get through my to-do list, let alone squeeze in a workout. Does it really have that much of an impact on aging?
It really does. And it's not just about hitting the gym for hours every day. Think back to those blue zones we were talking about earlier. People there aren't necessarily running marathons or lifting weights. They're just naturally active as part of their daily lives. Walking, gardening, doing physical work around their homes. It's all about integrating movement into their everyday routine.
Okay, that sounds a lot more doable than trying to carve out a separate chunk of time for exercise.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to make movement a natural part of your life. And it doesn't have to be anything strenuous. Even just a few minutes of walking here and there can make a big difference.
All right, I can get on board with that. Movement is medicine. But what about the social aspect of things? I mean, we're not exactly living in those tight-knit villages like the blue zones.
That's a great point, and it's something Dr. Hyman addresses as well. He emphasizes the importance of social connection for longevity and well-being. Remember how we talked about those strong community bonds in the blue zones?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how connected those communities are.
Right. And those close relationships and sense of belonging actually help buffer against stress and create a more meaningful life, which in turn can contribute to a longer, healthier lifespan.
So it's not just about what we put in our bodies and how we move, it's also about who we surround ourselves with.
Exactly. It's about nurturing all aspects of ourselves, physical, mental, emotional, and social. And Dr. Hyman doesn't shy away from the impact of mental and emotional health on aging either. He talks about the importance of addressing unresolved trauma and finding healthy ways to manage stress.
Yeah, we all know how much stress can age us. What does he recommend for dealing with that?
He mentions a range of things, from therapy to yoga, even psychedelic therapy in some cases.
Wow, he's really covering all the bases. It's pretty impressive, but honestly, I'm already starting to feel a little overwhelmed. It's like there's just not enough time in the day for all this healthy stuff.
I know it can seem like a lot to take in. But that's why Dr. Hyman provides some really practical tips and tools to make it all feel more manageable.
Okay, good, because I definitely need some practical advice. Tell me more about these tips.
Well, one thing that might surprise you is that he's a big advocate for prioritizing animal protein, especially as we age.
Really? I thought he'd be all about plant-based eating.
He's not saying to ditch plants altogether. He still emphasizes the importance of getting plenty of fruits and vegetables for those amazing phytochemicals. But he does make a compelling case for including animal protein, especially as we get older.
Interesting. So, like, steak over tofu. That's definitely not what I was
He
expecting.
doesn't get into specifics like that, but he does talk about the importance of protein timing, making sure to consume protein after exercise,
Ugh.
especially for older adults.
Okay, good tip. Anything else?
He also points out that getting enough protein can be tricky for vegans and might require a bit more planning or even supplementation.
Makes sense. And what about those trendy diets we hear so much about these days, like intermittent fasting and the keto diet? Any thoughts on those?
He actually gives a really balanced overview of these approaches, explaining the potential benefits and also the things to be aware of.
Okay, so he's not pushing any one-size-fits-all solution, which I appreciate.
Exactly. It's about finding what works best for you as an individual. And for those who are interested in going a bit further, he also talks about supplements, like the basics, vitamin D, omega-3s, probiotics. And then he touches on some more, I guess you could call them advanced supplements, things like NMN and Physitin.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of information. What about exercise? Any specific recommendations there?
He emphasizes the importance of variety, incorporating cardio, strength training, and flexibility into your routine.
So basically mixing things up. Got it. Anything else on the exercise front?
He's also a big fan of something called hormesis.
Hormesis. Now that one's new to me.
It's basically the idea of challenging your body a little bit, pushing it slightly outside its comfort zone to make it stronger.
So things like cold plunges and saunas, I've heard those can be good for you.
Exactly. Things that might feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but actually have long-term benefits.
Interesting. It's like giving your body a little wake-up call. Okay, so we've got diet, exercise, social connection, mental and emotional well-being. Anything else we need to know about living younger?
Well, Dr. Hyman also gives us a glimpse into the future of longevity. He talks about things like stem cells, exosomes, and even regenerative medicine clinics.
Wow, now we're getting really futuristic. Sounds like there are some exciting possibilities on the horizon.
Definitely. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. Remember how we talked about personalized medicine?
Yeah, tailoring the Young Forever plan to our individual needs.
Exactly. And that's where those quizzes and assessments come in, and even biomarker testing.
Right. It's like getting a personalized roadmap for aging well.
Exactly. And Dr. Hyman even mentioned some specific companies that offer these types of tests. Places like Gallieri, Prenuvo, and Clearly.
This is all so fascinating. I'm already thinking about which tests I might want to look into.
It's amazing how much information we have at our fingertips these days.
Yeah.
And it really puts us in control of our own health journey.
It really does. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but before we wrap things up, I want to make sure we give our listeners some clear next steps. Where do we even begin with all of this? I feel like I need a step-by-step guide.
I hear you. It can feel a little overwhelming at first, but don't worry. That's what we'll be diving into in our next segment. Stay tuned.
Okay, we're back. I don't know about you, but I'm still processing all that info about Dr. Hyman's Young Forever plan.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah,
But super fascinating.
it is. I'm actually feeling kind of hopeful. Like, we really can take control of our health as we age.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just about accepting those, typical signs of aging.
Right, it's not just about getting older, it's about aging well. Okay, so let's bring it all home for our listeners. If they could only remember a few things from Young Forever, what would you say are the most important takeaways?
Hmm. Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's not about any one magic bullet. It's about taking a holistic approach to aging.
Right, it's about making lifestyle changes that support health and vitality as we get older.
Exactly.
Okay, so Dr. Hyman gives a ton of great advice in the book. But if you had to narrow it down to a few key points, where would you start?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say ditch the sugar and processed foods. That's a big one.
Okay, so step one, clean up the diet. Got it. What else?
Number two, move your body regularly. Find activities you enjoy and make them a part of your daily routine.
So basically, make movement a habit. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just keep moving.
Right. Even a little bit each day can make a difference.
Okay, movement is medicine. What's next?
Number three, prioritize sleep. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep every night.
Oh yeah, sleep. I'm definitely guilty of not getting enough of that sometimes. I know it's important, but it's so easy to let it slide.
I know, it's tough. But it's worth making it a priority. Sleep is when our bodies do a lot of their repair and rejuvenation work.
Right, it's like hitting the reset button for our bodies.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm adding sleep to my list of things to work on. What else?
Now, number four, nurture those social connections. Spend time with loved ones, engage in activities that bring you joy, and cultivate a sense of community.
So it's not just about taking care of our physical bodies, it's also about our mental and emotional well-being, and those connections play a big role in that.
Absolutely. Feeling connected and supported can make a huge difference in how we age.
Makes sense. Okay, what's number five?
Number five is finding healthy ways to manage stress. Whether it's meditation, spending time in nature, or pursuing a creative hobby, make time for activities that nourish your soul.
I love that. It's about finding those things that help us de-stress and recharge.
Exactly.
Wow, this is great. It's like a blueprint for a happier, healthier life.
It really is. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making small, sustainable changes over time.
Right. Progress over perfection.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all the things Dr. Hyman recommends doing, but are there any things he suggests we avoid?
Oh, absolutely. He talks about limiting exposure to environmental toxins as much as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
He also cautions against excessive alcohol consumption and smoking.
Right. Those are no-brainers. What else?
And he also encourages us to be mindful of unnecessary medical interventions that might actually do more harm than good.
So it's about being proactive and taking care of ourselves, but also being discerning about when to intervene.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Makes sense. And remember, Dr. Hyman is a big advocate for personalized medicine.
Oh, yeah. He emphasizes that a lot in the book.
He provides a framework, but he really encourages people to use those quizzes, assessments, and biomarker testing to figure out what works best for them as individuals.
Right. It's about tailoring the plan to your unique needs and circumstances.
I love that. It takes the guesswork out of it.
Totally.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to start living younger right now.
Me too. It's amazing how much potential we have to age well if we make it a priority.
So true. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that aging might be inevitable, but feeling old is optional.
I love that. It's such a powerful reminder.
It really is. So, to our listener out there, we'll leave you with this question. What small change can you make today to start living younger? Remember, it's all about those small steps. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Young Forever. We'll see you next time.